Good day, everybody. Welcome. I'm so excited today. We have Dr. Paul Loep van Zuilenburg here with us. And he's a musician. That's where I met him. I've seen 3 of his concerts so far. He's also a business person. And he also has a lot of good ideas about fatal flaws. And we spoke, and he told me about the book he wants to write about that. So that's basically what we're going to speak about today. Before we get there, I want to encourage you to like this video, to subscribe, leave a comment, send it to people, because we do believe it's going to help them. We are called Mind Prosperity, and we believe where your mind goes, your life will follow. Paul, welcome. It's nice to have you here with us today.
Oh, well, thank you for having me.
Yeah, we are very, very excited. Like I just said, I've seen 3 of you guys' concert with the Symphony Orchestra. Am I saying that right?
Yes, Symphony Orchestra, indeed.
That's what you call it. And you are the orchestrator. Is that the right word?
I'm the conductor.
Conductor. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. And I think that's when I see these shows, I always think like the conductor has the most difficult job. And the reason I'm saying that is because I don't always understand what you guys do.
Indeed.
Will you tell the people a bit about your music career?
Yes, I studied trumpet at Stellenbosch. My father and my mother were both professional musicians. My grandmother was a fantastic violinist. Both my kids are now studying music as well, so it's something that we do. Like other people play golf, we do music. Studied music at Stellenbosch, then went to Rotterdam in Holland, where I did a master's diploma, came back to South Africa, spent a year and a half in the army, where I actually played in the army band for a while.
Playing the army band, that's
I was drafted into infantry in Ladysmith, and after 3 months of running around in the bush with the R4, I phoned my father and said to him, listen, I need to get out of this here, because I've just come back from Holland. I was in top condition as a trumpet player, and I was not playing for any moments. So he got me into the army band. I don't know if it was better or worse, because, you know, that's a different world there, but we survived that. And then after the army, I went to play for the Untitled Philharmonic Orchestra in Durban. My wife is also a musician, and she joined me there, and we spent a couple of years in Durban, and then I taught at Hilton College at the music department, and then got a post here at Koffsies in Bloemfontein. And in 2013, I decided I wanted to do my own thing. So that's what I'm doing now. I do my own thing.
Where did you complete the doctor's degree?
I actually did a master's at Stellenbosch and a PhD at UNISA.
Okay.
And I did my MBA here at the business school here in Bloemfontein.
Tell us a bit about your business career and your business thoughts. I think that's very important for some people.
Yes, my father's father, in other words, my grandfather, was a banker in Holland. And if we say a banker, he owned the bank.
Wow.
So it wasn't like he worked in the bank. That was pre-Second World War, and after the World War, everything was destroyed financially. But he was a businessman. He was the only businessman in the family. Everybody else were musicians. And so I've always had this thing in my head that I wanted to do little businesses. So while I was playing in the orchestra in Natal, I actually had a panel beating shop where I panel beated people's cars and painted them and repaired them. And then I had a little construction business and a little printing business. I always had little businesses on the run. And then when I started lecturing here at Koffsies, I had the opportunity to do the MBA, and that was just to really find out what is business actually all about, because we had these ideas, you just pick them up from the street, but they're not always the right ones. And then in 2013, I resigned from the university. I felt that it was a place where I couldn't do what I wanted to do. It was too restrictive. People had their ideas about reality, which were not the same as my idea of reality. Coming from the practical background, it didn't really fit in with the theoretical and academic in many ways. So I'm still involved at university level. I still lecture at Pretoria as a guest lecturer, actually a full-time guest lecturer. And then started my own business, which was the orchestra we started here in Bloemfontein, the Bloemfontein Philharmonic. It was then called the Bloemfontein City Orchestra. That was 2012, actually we had already started that. So it was sort of, the momentum was going by the time I resigned in the middle of 2013. And then in 2015 we started the Stellenbosch Orchestra, which is called the Stellenbosch City Orchestra, and that has really picked up very well, and it's probably the sort of cash cow, if I want to call it, to drive the other orchestras, because in the Cape there's more culture, there's more attendance, the attendances are better. And we've now just started, the plan is to revive the Pretoria Orchestra, so hopefully in October we can have that going again.
I want to ask this just quickly based on the orchestra. If people want to contact you guys, like maybe for bookings and stuff like that, how would they do that? Can they email you? Do you guys have a Facebook page? Do you guys have a YouTube
I think the
channel?
easiest thing is to go to Facebook. There's a page called South African City Orchestras, which is the sort of umbrella organization that control the 3 orchestras. So if you want to know anything about any one of the 3, you can just go there, send me a private message on Messenger, and I should pick it up.
So it's kind of like 3 orchestras that's now your business. That
Basically,
you are
that's my business, yeah.
Okay.
I do a bit of freelance trumpet playing. I play first trumpet for the Free State Symphony Orchestra. I do a little bit of teaching, but I try to keep that little and as possible, because with my schedule, I'm out of town a lot, and it's not so good for the pupils if you don't see them every week.
Wow.
They don't practice if you don't work with them.
Well, okay. Let me not say anything on that. But I wanna speak about this, and this is where we are today. So, you know, the goal of this is to teach people, you know, how to go forward, how to think forward, how to, you know, not let things keep you back the whole time. Okay, so we're going to speak about fatal flaws. And I remember with my first coffee with you, you started to speak about fatal flaws, and I got so interested in this topic that I want to know more. So tell us a bit, what are fatal flaws?
It's a little idea I've had in my head for a while, and I've been looking around me and looking at people and wondering, why aren't they actually achieving what they should be, or what you see a potential, but it never comes to fruition. And I think I started looking inwards at myself, realizing that there are certain things that if I'd done it better, or if I changed them, I could improve. And then you ask about the concept of what is success and where are you heading, all of those things. But it's pretty much the concept that if you fix a few little things in your personality, you probably will be much more successful. Successful, obviously, is your own definition, whether that be with your family, with your business, with your career, with people that you interact with. And I think those are little sort of small little kinks in your armor, if I could call it, that if you understand what they are, you can mitigate against them. You can say, well, I'm somebody that is very lazy, so I just don't ever get anything done. So I have to understand that if I want to get something done, I should overcome my laziness. Or if I say, I have a short temper, I get angry with everybody around me, and then nobody wants to work with me or engage with me or use me for anything. I always say in the music industry, it's much more important that people like you than that you are very good. If there are 2 people that are equally skilled, and the one is a likable fellow and the other one is one that you're saying, oh my goodness, he's going to be difficult, he's going to have trouble with him, then who are they going to choose? Obviously the one that's likable. So there's like a fatal flaw in the other person. His personality is keeping him from maybe getting extra work, working with people. So that's basically the idea of my fatal flaw concept.
I want to ask you this question, because there's something you just said. There's this one neuroscientist that made the following statement. He said, your personal reality, your personality will create your personal reality.
Yes.
And I think that's basically what you are saying. But I want to ask you this question, because you were just speaking about 2 people who are equally talented, but one has this nice personality, the other one doesn't. I want to ask you this question: what if they are not equally talented? What if the one with the angrier personality or the lazier personality is actually more talented? Will you take a good personality above talent, or the other way around?
I think that's a very good question, and I think in my own reality, where I work with a lot of people, because I have these orchestras and it's a professional amateur-based concept, and I have to motivate people really to do things what I want to do, but make them enjoy it as well. So they have to be, it has to be a fun event. And I've seen often that if there's one, what I call a bad apple, one person in there that upsets the balance of that we're having fun idea, it's so detrimental that you'd rather be without them.
That's good.
I can tell you a story about a very famous South African conductor, I won't name his name, working in Europe, coming out in the middle 90s to work with the Natal Philharmonic Orchestra, which was called then, it's now the KZN Philharmonic. He's a great conductor, fantastic musician, but the orchestra hated him because of the way he interacted with them. He was derogatory, he was negative, and then 20 years later he asked me, because I played in that orchestra at that time. They asked me why I never asked back. And I said, because you misbehaved. People didn't like you.
Wow. And he was talented?
And he's still talented, and I think he still hasn't learned that lesson, because I still work with him and he's still the same.
You heard that? I still work with him and he's still the same. Like, don't become that person.
Yeah, and I think that's very important what you just said. You should learn from your mistakes. Lots of people don't. They realize they have the mistake and they think, that's just the way I am. I'm not going to change it. And I think we're all like that, because it's difficult to change.
No.
It takes energy. You have to do something. It's not just a static situation.
And I think it's not just like this willingness to change, but also the acknowledgement that there's a problem.
Absolutely.
Because I think one thing with fatal flaws, and it's you can tell me what you think about this. I think one thing with fatal flaws is it's almost as if people embrace it, as if like, this is a good thing that I'm like this, or they don't.
Yes, it's sort of part of my character. People are expecting me to be weird or odd, or I don't know what the word could be. Yes, you're absolutely right.
Have you ever seen that movie Whiplash?
No, I know of it, but I don't think I've seen it.
So I think you should. I think everybody should. It's exactly what you're speaking about. It's about this jazz drummer coach. So he coaches people on the jazz drums, and he's like just fighting with him the whole time. And he gets this one guy that's like very, very talented. And at the end, this guy rebelled against him, and he tried to do all of these things just to tick this guy off, and to make his life a living hell. And and it's like these two talented people, but the one upsetted the other one so much as a teacher because of his anger, because of his temper. And it was always like when they asked him about it, he's like, no, this temper and this anger is going to cause other people to become great.
Yeah, I think I relate very much to that, because as a conductor, you get up in front of the orchestra. There's 40 people, there's 3 days, and there's a show. So there's no pressure. And then people do really stupid things. And then you want to explode. And then you have to tell yourself, and I have to tell myself, nothing in the world is important enough to explode here, because after 5 minutes, how are we going to repair that problem?
I love that. Wait, we just have to stop there. Nothing is worth exploding here.
Exploding in that situation and creating such a negative thing that you cannot fix afterwards. We're not busy with surgery on somebody's heart. If it goes wrong, there's a wrong note, somebody plays it, didn't count, it's still not a life and death situation. It's the same with teaching, I think. When you're at school, that's where I learned this, because I was a teacher for 10 years, and you lose it with the kids, because they do the weirdest things. So they don't do what you're supposed to do, or they don't arrive when they should, and then you blow up. And then to fix that personal relationship is nigh impossible. Because once it's broken, it's like dropping a glass. You cannot pick it up. You can buy a new glass, but it's not the same glass. So I think that's a very important thing when you're working with people, that the relationship thing is always the most important thing. Because if the relationship is healthy, people will do much more than you expect.
That's good.
But if there's problems in the relationship, they will do just enough, or maybe not just enough. And I think people in corporate need to understand that.
Wow. There's a quote by Aristotle, and I kind of use this quote a lot, and it says, anybody can be angry. That is easy. But to be angry with the right person at the right time, for the right reason and to the right extent,
yes,
that is not easy.
I think that's very true. And I think once you have children, you understand that even more.
Well, we'll see one day. And now speaking about that, like I've heard parents actually saying things like this. They said, like, before we were parents, we said, I would never talk to my kid like that. I would never react to my kid like that until I had kids. Yeah. So I think the thing is, like, I teach a lot about emotional intelligence, and I love emotional intelligence. And there was a study that said, if your emotional intelligence increases with 5%, with 5 points, your life quality increases with 72%. And if you look what emotional intelligence is all about, it's about interpersonal intelligence, understanding others and knowing how to interact with them, intrapersonal intelligence, understanding myself and how to interact with me. And I think if you don't recognize your fatal flaws, and if you're not willing to work through them, that's a very bad self-awareness.
I think so. You're absolutely right. I think you're just ignoring the reality.
That's good, yeah.
You're hoping it'll be fine, or you're hoping it'll go away, or something will happen that will improve by itself. It's that thing that keep doing the same thing and hoping there's going to be a different result. It's not. It'll be the same.
This is probably the quote that I use the most on my channel. I think everybody that watches my channel can quote this back to front, but I'm going to say it again. It's a quote from Dr. Darius Daniels. He said, "You cannot outgrow brokenness. You have to fix it."
Yeah.
And I think that's the thing with fatal flaws. You have to fix this. And what I want to ask is, say for instance, now as a leader of the orchestra, you sit with somebody and you see like this person is talented, and they're not necessarily an angry person, but you just see like they don't. Hulle kom net nie in die gang nie, soos hulle in die Afrikaans sê. They just don't have that passion.
They don't get off the mark.
Now, what would you say? How do you, as a leader, deal with a situation
I can maybe push it just a little bit off that line. I've had people in the orchestra where they had literally problems that they would arrive drunk in a concert on stage.
Wow.
And you know that is like a super no-no. I mean, once the audience sees that, it reflects on everybody. And in both orchestras, actually this happened. And then you would go to them and say to them, "I'm not going to let you play here anymore until you sort this problem out."
That's good.
And then 6 months later, they're back. And then you've got to make the choice, will I let them back or not? And I always do. And then they always come up to scratch. I think maybe that's part of the answer. Maybe it's not the whole answer. But you have to make them face their reality. I think that's the answer. You know?
I love that, yeah.
You have to say, listen, you can't do that. I can't use you. You're fantastic. You're talented. But you must pull yourself together, because this is bigger than any one of us. This is a unit. This is an organism that functions with all its bits and pieces. One that doesn't work, the whole thing fails.
I want to bring this in. I'm also a student of the Bible. I studied theology, and there's actually a part in the Bible where the son comes to the father, and the son says to the father, "Give me my inheritance. I want to go, do with it what I want." And there was a time where he blew all his money, and he ended up with pigs.
Yeah.
And the Bible says when he came to his senses, he returned back. And I think what you're saying is sometimes you just have to allow people to sit in that fatal flaw
and sit there.
And the day you come to your senses, you are welcome to come back.
Yeah.
So using that story, is that correct? Is that?
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I think somebody has to face the reality and have to find how far they've gone, or what is the problem. And maybe sometimes it needs an event or a person or an action to make you think, my gosh, that is actually me, I need to fix that.
Yeah. And say for instance a person is kind of fixed. If I don't think you can always be 100%
fixed is a bad word.
But let's say you're emotionally at a good place, you're working hard, but you're still trusting for that breakthrough. How important is it, just to stay persistent and to carry on and to keep working hard and to keep believing in yourself?
Yeah, I think that's a very good question, because from the art side and from the music side, you start playing when you're 10 years old, and then by high school you think maybe I can do this for a living, and then all those hours that you put in and hoping that you will make a living from it one day. But that's the only way, the Gary Player saying, the more I practice, the luckier I get.
That's brilliant.
And I think with us, I'm in my mid-50s now and still play trumpet, but it's a physical game. So you can't just pick it up after 2 weeks and hope for the best. You have to keep going. That's
very important.
It's like you're gymming every day, you're gymming on the trumpet, as it were. And I see with my son now studying in Germany, he's now at the end of his master's and at that point where he has to get a job. He's competing with half of Asia, from Korea, Japan.
That's a lot of people.
Yeah, and the standard's unbearably high, and he keeps saying to me, it's so difficult, I don't know if I'm going to make it. And I say to him, we'll just have to keep pushing through, because unfortunately we're not going to know if we're going to make it if we give up now.
That's good.
So just keep going, And then if it doesn't work really in the next 4 or 5 years, then obviously it's not going to work. Then we have to look at it. But I mean, then and what happens at that point is you start losing. You get self-doubt. You start thinking, I'm not good enough. And he sends me some recordings. He says, that was a terrible recording. I'm going, my goodness, it's unbearably good, you know. But he's already lost that, and then you have to realign yourself to understand, but what is the reality around you? I think those are concepts I think that are important.
Yeah, and I think one of the fatal flaws that you just mentioned that a lot of people sit with is they are actually good, but they think they're bad.
Yeah, very. And
then
much.
you sit with people who think they're good, but they're actually bad.
I'm married to a woman like that, who has unbelievable talents, but doesn't believe any of it is really worthwhile. So you have to throw her in a deep end, and then she does amazing things, and then she realizes, wow, I'm actually good. You know those people that are brash and full of energy and baffles you, but there's actually nothing really below the surface. They get very far in life.
Wow.
Because people are, I don't know, they just perceive them as capable because they say they are capable.
Wow.
While other people that are maybe shy or introverted, but can do the work, sometimes don't get where they need to be because of that.
And I think you are really in the right position to speak about this, because I cannot think of somebody in an orchestra, let alone somebody who's leading an orchestra, that has to do repetition and has to know self-confidence.
I think from a trumpet player's side, it's not, if you play a trumpet, it's not a quiet instrument. So if you play in an orchestra, everybody hears you. So it's interesting how similar type of personalities become trumpet players. They're sort of a bit extroverted, a little bit noisy, a little self-confident type of people. And then you'll see the people playing in the back of the cello section, they are like introverted, quiet people, because there's lots of people around them and they can carry them. I think you're right. And another thing is that as a musician, we are never taught to be leaders.
I like that.
We are usually followers, because there's the conductor, do what the conductor says. But then you become the conductor, and what now? Now suddenly you can't follow anybody else because there's nobody to follow. And then you're forced to become a leader. And then it goes beyond just fixing the music. It becomes, in other situations, people seem to think you know everything because you're the conductor. You're just another guy that's got on top of that thing there with the stocky. So it's for us that we are not taught to be leaders as musicians. We are taught to master our craft, follow other people, work with people, because you have to work together, otherwise it doesn't work. But we never are taught to be leaders. And I think that in the arts world, I would see that as sort of a thing that could be fixed, that artists must be leaders as well, because in the end, all the beautiful things we see around are done by artists, not by mathematicians and scientists and computer programmers, but by artists.
Yeah. And I think it's actually John Maxwell who said this. He said leadership is influence.
Yeah.
And I think when we think about leadership, we always think titles and positions, and we don't think, but if I can just influence people, I can be a leader.
I think that's something that you are taught when you are a teacher. You see the influence you can have on people around you simply by just doing the right thing.
That's good.
Not by doing something spectacular.
Just by doing the right thing.
Doing what is expected. And people looking up to that, because they don't have role models anymore. We look at our youth in South Africa, who are their role models? They don't have fathers, they have been brought up by grandparents, or the schools, or their friends. Where are the role models? And that's already, just to be a solid role model, that's already, I think, very important.
That's very, very good. I want to just thread, because we spoke about some things. Are there any other things that you can identify as fatal flaws that we really haven't mentioned now, but that you can think about?
Oh, there's many things, not wanting to start something or not being able to finish something. I think that's a very, I'm like that. I'm a great ideas person. And then somebody else has to run with it because I'm already at the next idea. I'm not the maintenance type of guy. And if you understand that, that's fine. But if you don't, then you will start something that will never finish. You know that guy that starts the car in the garage and he's restored it, but it never drives. Or he's done the boat, but it's never been on the water. I mean, those are physical examples. But you have projects but never get off the ground because you cannot finish them. For me, procrastination is an absolute killer. And people say procrastination is not laziness. It is laziness. It's you putting it off because you don't want to do it, and then you leave it to the right last moment, and then you barely get it done.
Or it can be fear sometimes.
I think maybe that could be as well, that you don't want to face that thing that you have to face. For me, when I did my MBA, I realized you can't, there's too much work. You won't be able to just finish it the evening before. So I got into that regular situation where I would do every night. Doesn't matter if it was 2 o'clock in the morning, I would just do a little bit of work. And by the end of the week, there was actually something done. And then you realize, but I have a friend who's an engineer. And I really look up to his way of life in the sense that everything is very methodical. It would kill me. But on Sunday morning before church, he washes his cars. His car's always clean that week. He goes, he rides his bicycle 6:30 in the morning till 7:05. But it's literally like that. Not like 7:30 till 7 roundabout. It's till 5:05. Then by 15:15, he's had his breakfast, and by 5:35, he is in his office. And he gets an incredible amount of stuff done that way because he's really organized. I'm not like that. And obviously, I think that would kill me. That will kill all the creativity that maybe there is. But those are things that, if you realize that you have that problem, you should sort out. I can think of, there are so many things. I mean, for example, perfectionism. When is it good enough? Because for a perfectionist, it's never good enough. So when do you actually stop trying to improve on whatever there is?
So that's also a fatal flaw, perfectionism.
I think so.
Okay.
It kills everybody around you as well. There's another book I want to write, Living with Perfectionism.
Mine is Living with Humility. So, I don't know if I think this is a good question. Let's see what you think about this, but this is something that I really want to know. When is it a fatal flaw that you have to deal with?
Yeah.
And when is it just a personality trait that you have to accept?
Yeah, I hear what you say. I think a fatal flaw, it would be the definition, it's fatal. In other words, it stops something dead that could have been alive.
Oh, that's good.
So if you cannot get to a point where you want to be, then it becomes a fatal flaw. If you can reach your goals, but instead of going straight there, you had a little bit of a detour here, and you went through a pothole there, but you got there, then I don't think it's a fatal flaw. It's maybe irritant to somebody around you, but I think once it stops you from, you wanted to be there, but you only ended up there because there was something that kept you from getting there. That's the important part.
And how would you encourage people to deal with their fatal flaws?
I think personally, you just have to face them square on.
Okay.
And I think start at one. Maybe, I mean, I think to say we've got one fatal flaw is also maybe not true. I think we all have fatal flaws, and there are probably a multitude of them. Some of them are easier to fix, some of them are more obvious, some of them are maybe not even important. But I think find one that you think is the most important one. If you always are late for something, it drives everybody nuts. It makes you rush in traffic. It makes you a danger to people around you. Face it and say, okay, instead of 3 minutes before that I drive, I'm going to put my watch 5 minutes early, and I will always be on time at least, because it's just respect for somebody else's time as well, isn't it? And then that's a small thing, but you can start with something that's actually fixable. And once you see that, and you think, but okay, we can overcome these things, we just have to find ways of doing it.
That's very good. And are there any fatal flaws you had to overcome personally?
My grandmother is Italian. Okay. So we have a short temper, traditionally. It's like the way the Italians work, you know, ants flying and screaming at everybody, but it's not important. I think that's one thing. I am very, you know, when people make me wait, or people drive slowly in traffic, or
I'm also like that. Why do people drive so slow?
That sort of thing I had to really learn. The other thing is that I had what we call in Afrikaans drempelvrees, actually getting myself into, you know, contacting people or starting a conversation or getting to start with interacting, and that I had to overcome. You know, I wouldn't want to phone somebody because I'd get my father to phone them rather. And once I got to do that, then it's not a problem anymore.
Your father, I just want to make sure, your mother was Italian, your father was Dutch.
Actually, my mother is Afrikaans.
Okay.
My father is Dutch-Italian.
Oh, Dutch-Italian.
So my grandmother is Italian on my father's side.
Okay. Dutch-Italian, that's a interesting...
I looked at it the other day. My grandfather was actually at one stage the consul general in Italy. So he spent quite a bit of time in Italy, but they lived in Holland.
And you feel like you have overcame that, or you've dealt with that? Or
I think those I have. I think there are still some that I should work on more, and I think one of them is that total Dutchness of mine, to be too candid, to actually say what should be said and maybe shouldn't have been said.
Yeah.
More trying to be like an Englishman, you know, not saying what you mean, but saying it anyway.
Always keeps you wonder.
Yeah. So I think I'm sure there are still, none of us are perfect. I think the first thing one must realize is we're not perfect. But we are fixable in a sense.
And I think,
or improvable.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And I think one of the worst things a person can ever do is to think I've arrived.
Yeah.
I'm now at a place. Interesting thing that I want to say, and I want to conclude this, but obviously you can add to it. I work with many people in mind prosperity. We do psychological sessions, we do emotional intelligence sessions, we do sessions in mindset and a lot of things. And it's very interesting when I speak at companies, when I speak at places. It's normally your CEOs and top managers that will come back and they will speak to you and they want to know more and they are interested.
Yes.
And it's more people who, if I can say it like this, you can see like they just want to get this over with.
Just survive through it and just get going.
That are more at different levels. So you can see achievers are people, I want to know more, I want to grow, I want to get better. Can you please help me? I think that's very important.
And you referred to that whole mindset and mind game thing. I think that's another thing that's very important. I mean, obviously there's a lot of research in sport about that. But in music, there's the same thing because, I mean, you're on stage, you're in front of people, and you still got to get it right somehow. And how does your mind make you go either better or worse? Do you kill yourself on stage by being afraid? What makes you afraid? That's also another very interesting world to explore. And self-confidence is a part of that, and also understanding what you're doing. Again, if you make a mistake, nobody's going to die. But for you are dying.
I feel like, I'm exposed now in front of everybody.
Yeah. And I see that with my son at this stage in his life, where he is that in the early part of his career, and how much pressure he puts on himself, which is not necessary.
Yeah.
I think once you lift your own pressure off yourself in many ways, then the pressure from the outside world is not that much. Because people are not really worried about you. They've got their own dramas. They're not really worried about what you are doing. They're just trying to get through their life. And I think we think too much about what other people think.
Definitely. It's like when you go on December holidays and you go to the beach. Everybody wants to look great, but nobody looks at you. They're just so self-aware of what they look like.
Forgot to go to the gym early enough.
This is the last question but I just feel like based on what you said, I have to ask this, because you said you have to take fear off, you have to take pressure off. Is a little bit of fear good? Is a little bit of pressure good?
I think so. I think we've seen it. I see it as a trumpet player that I can actually perform above my normal level because it's a physical instrument. I can actually do things when that adrenaline is a little bit up there and it pushes you a bit. But it's so difficult because it goes over that level, then it starts inhibiting you. I think I won't call it fear. I think it's more nerves. We call it nerves, eh? And I think that is more the way of focusing yourself and concentrating. When I conduct, I don't have that similar fear, but I have that amazing. It's like tunnel vision. You know, the world can explode next to you, but you wouldn't deviate from what you're doing because you are focusing on so many things. Your mind is so much busy. I mean, you've got a score there with 16 lines and you're trying to remember who's doing what, and then something goes wrong and you have to find a sort of panel beat it on the run. And I've seen that you focus incredibly like that, and I think that is what you need if you're doing something special at that moment. You need it's like that downhill biker. Yeah. I mean, if he goes just a little bit left and hits that rock, it's the end of the game. But it doesn't because he's focusing.
Yeah. That's very good. I just have to say this is the last concert I've seen of them was at the Saint-Duplessis Theatre, and he had a trumpet. he had the, do you know, they call it the conductor stick?
Yeah, conducting baton.
Conducting baton. That's the first thing they teach you. and he had this book. So I remember, like, you played the trumpet and then you took the baton and you showed the people and you turned around and you took, like, you were doing 3 things the whole time.
I was doing a little bit more than is expected of a conductor in that concert because we didn't have a French horn, so I was covering his part.
well done. That was great. Dr. van Zuilenburg, this was really, really amazing. Thank you so much for teaching us about fatal flaws. I think this helped a lot of people. I know this helped a lot of people. It did help me. Thank you so much, and good luck with all your endeavors. You guys are really amazing. Like I said, I've seen you guys 3 times, and I'm looking forward to the next one. Thank you for being on our channel. Thank you for sharing your wisdom. We really appreciate it.
No, but it's an absolute pleasure, and I think I've learned myself something today.
Oh, that's always good. Teach yourself. Teach yourself. You are your best leader. If you cannot lead you cannot lead others.
Yeah, thanks so much.
Thank you guys for watching. We love you, and we will see you on our next videos. Goodbye.